first question is more like a comparison with respect to mothers. If we compare, in earlier times, how mothers were largely homemakers versus the present scenario where a lot of mothers choose to work full time thanks to, supporting services like daycare centers or domestic help. So what do you think? Does that, how does that affect the bond shared between a child and the mother?
I don't think, Paridhi, that in my opinion, a working mother or a non-working mother would have any different a bond with her child, because that would mean, like, if you said that a working mother, for example, doesn't have a good bond with her child, or a working mother cannot have a good bond with her child, what you are actually also saying is that a mother who's at home 24 hours a day would have a perfect bond with her child. So you're implying in a way that staying at home is a condition that is required to bond between mothers and their children effectively, which is actually not the case. If you go to see in our country, for example, there are many mothers who choose to stay at home, or who are forced to stay at home, or who have circumstances which don't enable them to go to work once they have children. And if you look at all those children and mother diets, it's not necessary that all of them are functioning well and all of them are bonding well. So I don't think that being at home all the time and working or not working is any sort of a prerequisite or a condition required to bond effectively with your children. I think even working mothers can have effective bonds with their children, as we see both sorts of cases. We see cases of children at home with their mothers full time and they don't have any sort of bonding with their mothers, and we see cases of mothers working away from home, working, traveling also for work related issues, and they have very nice bonds with their kids. So I don't think that there is any sort of connection in that.
Okay, right. And with the lockdown, how these supporting services are currently not available. So, do you think that what sort of impact that is going to have on working mothers, or their, I mean, how do they manage their time, or uh, you know?
Well, I think that is an actually it's a very good question, and I think that this is one of the biggest problems this lockdown has created. Is that mothers who are working full time are under a lot of pressure right now, and they're feeling very pressurized right now. I get a lot of mothers talking to me about, there is this thing of, I have to work, I have to look after my family, I have to look after the children, and I don't have help. A lot of house help who is living away and not living full time with the family is not even allowed to come into the societies or the buildings that these families are living in. So a lot of house help is not available, and it can put a lot of stress on the mother. So actually, contrary to and exactly what I said before, that a mother being away from home a few hours a day is not really the end of the world when it comes to bonding with a child. On the contrary, you can see in such a lockdown situation also that with the mother at home all the time and even working from home is actually detrimental to her bonding with her child, because she's feeling stressed, she's feeling overloaded, she's feeling burdened with so many responsibilities, and she's not getting the break and the respite that she gets when she goes to work and she gets to do her own thing. Or even if she's not working, if she has hobbies that she's pursuing, it gives her that break during the day to come back and then bond with her child. But actually this lockdown can serve as a trigger to worsen the bonding between parents and children if it is not managed in the right way. So I don't think that the lockdown can push the bonding unless the bonding is handled in such a way that both parents and children respect boundaries. So obviously this lack of help is going to have a very bad effect on working mothers especially. But at the same time, mothers have to remind themselves that it's a very unique situation that we all find ourselves in, and that they have to be uh, kind to themselves and be kind to the fact that they are human beings and they can't really do everything. So it's acceptance of the fact that you are also in a unique situation and your hands are tied. You can't do any too much more than what you're already doing. So I think acceptance of that is a very important thing.
Right. Makes sense. Shruti, I think we have two questions from the viewers. So the
Sure.
first question is, from Rajni, and she asks, how can we handle our children if we have two of same age?
Well, it all depends on the family circumstances. By two of the same age, I'm assuming maybe that she has twins or two very close in age. I also have two children who are very close in age and they're quite small as well. So it all depends on your family circumstances, actually. I'm not sure about her family, if she has a supportive husband, if she has supportive family who can help, if she's living in a joint family or she's living alone. But the important thing is that you should see this as an advantage rather than a disadvantage, because I have friends who have children who are way far apart in age, and they actually struggle to keep both the children entertained with the same things. There's always fighting over the remote, and there's fighting over who's going to get to watch what. But when you have two children of the same age, and especially if they're young, I think it's a very good time to turn this into an advantage rather than a disadvantage. So try to get them engaged in the same sort of toys, in the same sort of books, same sort of TV programs. You'd be lucky that they'll be involved in the same sort of things. So, use that to your advantage as much as you can.
Right.
Yeah.
So next, Shruti, my question is sort of a continuation to, the supporting services, right? In terms of additional support, compared to parents young parents who are, in the lockdown in joint families versus those who are living, in nuclear families. How do you think, what sort of differences are going to be there?
Well, in the case of joint or nuclear families, I don't think that there is any way to say which is better or which is worse, because it all comes to the basic dynamics which is running within the family. I mean, nuclear families can be very stressed, and even joint families can be very, very stressed. Whereas some nuclear families really use their situation to their advantage, that they have privacy and they have time alone with each other. Whereas a lot of people in joint families are doing very well because they have support and they have, so many family members to help them and look after the children. So it really doesn't, it really depends on the relationships each person has with the other person in the family. So the kind of relationship the grandparents have with their own children, so the young parents, and then the kind of relationship the young parents have with their own children, and also then the grandparents and what sort of relationship they have with their grandchildren. So if you have a joint family wherein there is no respect for boundaries, there is no respect for privacy, there is no respect for there's a lot of judgment, and there's a lot of pressure on you, and there's not enough respect for you as an individual, then being in a joint family at this time can be quite stressful. But if you have a family who is very respectful of your boundaries and your privacy and allows you to do things the way you want to do, then even a lockdown can feel like a blessing, because you'll be like, okay, I'm with my family, and at least there's somebody looking after me and somebody to look after my kids if I'm not feeling well. There's a big risk of catching COVID-19 at this time. So there is possibility that possibly that one advantage you feel, that maybe if you have joint family or your family around close to you, you're not afraid of what's going to happen if you have small children, because you can rely on other people if you fall sick to look after your kids. So I think that is a very big plus point. In nuclear families, particularly families which are living away, far away from their older parents, I think for them it's a little bit difficult. Probably they're scared because they might be, scared to catch COVID-19. I know a lot of young parents are very afraid of this. I'm living alone with my wife and my small kids. I don't have parents around. What's going to happen if I catch COVID-19? So obviously that is a very stressful situation for a nuclear family to be in. So it all depends, Paridi, on the unique situation and the unique dynamics of each family, But I think that either or both can be advantages, disadvantages, and even a joint family can be advantages, disadvantages. The most important thing right now is to remember that we all have boundaries and we all have limited capacity to do what we can do at a time like this, and to not try to expect too many things out of each other at this moment.
Got it. I have a question with respect to our current discussion.
Sure.
So Pooja asks how to take care of clashes between parents or between parents and other family members in case of handling kids in a joint family.
So unfortunately, this is a very common problem in the Indian mindset, is that when you're living in a joint family, and even if you're not living in a joint family, we have this mindset of, it takes a village to raise a child. And sometimes the entire village actually gets involved. And I don't think that that is necessary. And I think, in fact, that is quite detrimental to the well-being of the child. So whereas it's very important for grandparents and other family members, extended family members, to be a part of the child's life, I don't think that it is necessary, and it is not even good if too many people are disciplining and creating boundaries for the children. So this should be a responsibility, duty, and privilege of the parents only, in my opinion. Unless, and I'm specifying here why, because there are such cases, unless the parents are incapable of it. Maybe because they are not present, they have died, or they are divorced or separated, or they are incapable because of some other issues, like they're mentally struggling with something, they have addiction issues or something. Then the grandparents obviously can step in, or other family members can step in to look after the children and discipline them. But if, and I'm assuming here that this is a normal family situation, then you as a mother and a father as well has to uh, make it clear to the extended family and to the other family members that when it comes to disciplining your child, and when it comes to laying down rules and boundaries for your children, then it's the parents' wishes. Unfortunately, I know grandparents and others won't be happy to hear this, but it is the parents who have to decide that. And everybody else in the family has to respect that. Because you have to understand that if too many people try to discipline a child, the child is getting too much mixed information. And that can actually be very bad for the development of the child, because the child gets confused. Who do I follow? My mom's telling me no TV after 10 o'clock, but Dadi is saying you can watch TV after 10. It's no problem, beta, come watch. So that is, granny has to understand that this is actually quite bad for the child. The child has to be made to understand that you have to follow one rule, and it's mom's rule or dad's rule, whoever decides, but it should be the parents who get to decide that. And I think that parents can use this opportunity to explain to their parents in a very nice way that, look, it's actually harmful for the kids in the house if too many of us decide what should be happening. So, if you want the best for your grandchildren, you'll just let us decide the rules. And then, of course, you can tweak it a little bit here and there. But please, as much as possible, let us do the parenting and the disciplining. You just enjoy being, grandparents.
Good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. And I think so next we move on to, the relation between a father and a child. So I think, Shruti, in Indian society, there's, generally this image of a father as being, the practical or the strict kind, right? Which definitely leads to a different kind of bond. But during, the lockdown, there, I think fathers do have this opportunity to sort of, rework on that image, or emotionally work on, the bond between them and the child.
Right.
So what do you think? I mean, I think it's largely, a misconstruction of fathers, being less on the emotional side and more on the practical side. Do you think that, image is true, or, and if it is, how do you think that image can be worked upon during the lockdown?
I think that yes, in India, as far as I have seen, because I have a lot of experience with parenting in Europe. That's where I've been living for the last decade of my life. Compared to, let's say, Europe, India is, I would say, quite far behind when it comes to the involvement of fathers in day-to-day parenting. And I think that yes, there is this stigma, or there is this stereotypical attitude that men are working, they are strict, they are the breadwinners, and they should not be harassed with the child rearing stuff. Let the guy relax when he comes home. He's had a hard, stressful day at work. And this kind of thinking does exist in our country, but this kind of lockdown and pandemic has shown everybody that that's not actually the case, because when you're sitting at home and you're working from home, actually both parents are doing the equal amount of when it comes to earning money, or running the house, or running the finances, looking after things. Even women are equally involved today. So I think that is kind of changing this attitude in society, in Indian society, but I think it's going quite slow. And I don't think that it's happening everywhere. I think that there are very few households that are actually egalitarian or equal when it comes to both parents and both sexes looking after the kids equally. So yes, there is this, unfortunately, there is this, detachment, and there is this idea that fathers are not really, not the main caretakers of their children. And a perfect example of this is that, a lot of families in India use the word babysitting, that my husband is babysitting the kids today. And I have a big problem with that, because he's not babysitting, he's not getting paid for it, it's his own children, so he's parenting just like the mother is parenting.
Right.
So yes, I do think that there is this stigma. How much the lockdown changes this, I don't know, because honestly speaking, I think things will go back to the way they were once everything goes back to normal. Men will still go back to work, even women will still go back to work. And unfortunately, I think when things come back to normal, people are going to go back to their daily routine and their daily, so the thing is that systems within families don't change so easily unless one generation consciously makes an effort to change it for the next generation. So if
Right.
you, as a parent and as a father, if you really want to encourage your daughters and sons to be equally active at home, then you as a parent have to model that behavior at home starting now, so that the change will come when you have grandchildren. So the change will not be visible in our generation, Paridi. The change will be visible 70, 80 years from now. So I don't think change can
Right.
come so quickly, because this is a system that it's been going on for centuries. So,
That's
it will take a while for that to change.
got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I think it's just that today, I mean, there has to be a start, and then probably a century or so later we can hope for
Exactly.
these changes.
Exactly.
We're gonna take the questions in a while. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is also related to some of the questions that the viewers had asked.
Right.
So how work from home, the implementation of work from home has allowed parents the opportunity to take up a lot more activities with their children. So whether it's learning new activities, and there are so many trends going around, right? Whether it's making dalgona coffee or baking bread, I mean, there are a lot more opportunities for parents to bond with
Right.
their children. But there's also a contrasting scenario where work from home isn't easy for everybody. So the hectic schedules can also hamper the relationship between parents and young children.
Right.
So how exactly would you suggest that parents ensure that the bond and emotional connectivity is maintained with their children?
Well, I've always said that especially with young children, first of all, children are very smart. And especially we tend to underestimate children, because every generation, as every generation is born, we know that evolution takes care of many things. Like, for example, now we are seeing newborn babies coming out with the capacity to use their fingers with smartphones. So it's clear that this is not something that has been learned within the first month of birth, because they are already holding smartphones and able to use their fingers to scroll, even though they can't see anything within the first month of birth. So we know this from
Right.
research, that evolution is actually changing things. So children are getting the feedback from the mother's brain activity and the mother's neuronal activity during pregnancy itself. And the neuronal activity or the brain activity of mothers is probably teaching children to use devices. So evolution wise, I think that my point is that evolution has ensured that every generation is going to be smarter than the previous one. So we should not underestimate our children when it comes to learning about new things. And hence I always tell parents that the number one key for maintaining a good bond with your kids is communication. You need to talk about everything, and I don't think that communication should be one sided. What a lot of parents do, and a lot of mistakes, a lot of parents I've seen making this mistake, is that communication tends to be one sided. Like, I'm going to tell you something, you sit down and listen, and this is how it's
Right.
to be done. That's a problem, because like I said, children are being born smarter than they were. So they probably know a lot more than you think they know. They probably know a lot more than you, actually. So it's an important thing to keep a two-way discussion going whenever you communicate with your child. Communication doesn't mean lecturing. It means actually sitting down and having a conversation and trying to understand what your child thinks, feels, wants, needs from life. What do they want from their life? What do they imagine with their life? Even if it is something which you can't imagine, if you look back in your childhood, I'm sure that you would have many instances where you said, oh, my parents would not understand this. And unfortunately what happens is a lot of parents forget that they were also at one point in that situation. So it's important to keep a very open mind when you talk to your kids, and not judge them for anything. The minute there is this fear of judgment and there is this fear of negative feedback only, you can give negative feedback provided it is followed up with some positive feedback. If you keep giving negative feedback, then eventually what's going to happen is your children are going to shut down, and they're going to disconnect from you, and they're not going to want to share anything with you. They'd rather share it with their neighbors, with their friends, people online, strangers, and that's where you are inviting problems. So I think the most important thing for parents to do to maintain emotional bonding is keep an open mind, even if it is difficult for you to accept some of the things they say. Try to keep an open mind and keep open communication at all times. The important message that your child should get is that I can approach my parents whenever and wherever I want, and I know that it's a safe place. I can go and I can talk to somebody.
Right. And I think so then, sort of like an add-on to, the activities I mentioned, there's going to be a new challenge in terms of, teaching kids about, the new practices with respect to social distancing. So, whether it's at school or whether, at play, they will have to maintain, they will have to follow, different set of rules now. So what sort of challenges do you think, will arise in order to teach these new practices or explain the situation and its severity to them?
I think that for a while it might be, especially it depends on the age group of the children. So if you're looking at children from, let's say, the age of, so until they're school going, I don't think there's any need or any risk in with COVID-19. They shouldn't be bothered if they are below the age of 3 and they're not going to school. If you're looking at school going children from the age of 3 to, let's say, 10, 11, that's your vulnerable category, because they are at an age where socializing and playing with their friends comes very naturally to them. It's something that their brain is wired to do at that age. So it's going to be quite difficult for schools. It's not just a struggle for parents, it's going to be quite difficult for schools as well to implement social distancing norms and hygiene norms, like wearing masks, something that doesn't come naturally to kids, to any of us. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think the most important thing parents can do here is, a, be in touch with the school regularly. So communication with the staff at school is very important. Openly discuss your concerns with the child, with your child's teachers and caregivers. And like I said before, Paridhi, that all action begins with modeling. So you have to model the behavior that you want your children to learn eventually, and you are the best role models they have. And I think that if you if you practice social distancing and hygiene norms at home, and you explain to them regularly why you're doing that and what COVID-19 is, I think that kids are very smart and they will pick it up from you eventually. Obviously kids above the age of 12, I'm not really concerned, because teenagers are quite able to understand what's going on, and they are able to implement safe hygiene practices and social distancing. We've seen a lot of children, like especially teenagers, being involved online and raising awareness about COVID-19 and things like that. So that's not a very vulnerable category. The most vulnerable is from 3 to, I would say, the age of 10, 11 is the most challenging category. Like I said, take equal responsibility with the schools. So practice the same hygiene practices and social distancing practices at home. Model the behavior that you want your children to learn.
Got it. Yeah. I have a question, Shruti, from one of our viewers.
Sure.
So he's his question is how to balance the need for kids to be physically active in external environment, basically outside the house, in today's times, given this care due to COVID?
This is a good question, Paridi, because unfortunately we are in a very unique health crisis, and I don't think that parents should risk the lives of their children, their own lives, and the lives of their extended family, their parents, grandparents, and vulnerable people at home for a few hours of play outside. If you are living in a red zone or a containment area where COVID-19 is spreading fast, then I would say just wait it out. Try to keep your children involved physically at home. There are many videos on YouTube, which I use also with my kids, which have Zumba classes on them, which have daily activities like jumping and fitness activities for children, and they're 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. If you have young children, then I think 30 minutes of that should be enough. If you have older children, then maybe you can buy them a video game. Now they're allowing people to deliver online, so e-commerce has started, so there are online video games available in which they can be physically active at home also, like the Wii, where they can play tennis and all at home. If you can't do that, then just try to get them to exercise at home with you, be involved with them. But I wouldn't risk sending the kids out if you are not able to send them in a secure environment, like a garden in your building or area which is secluded, where you can practice social distancing. Then it's fine. But if it's not accessible and you are thinking of sending them out on the roads and the streets, I wouldn't advise it right now, because I think that, especially if you're living in a red zone, if you're living in a zone which is not that dangerous, then it's fine. But if you're living in a red zone, it's not worth the risk, because it's another month or two and we'll be out of this pandemic. Once numbers
Right.
start to drop in India, then you're basically clear and you can start resuming some sort of normal life. So don't worry about the children's external environment and outside. If they don't get outside environment for 1 or 2 months, it's not going to change much of their development. As long as you are involved with them at home, you can make some physical activities for them at home to jump around and play. Kids are very resilient and they're very strong, and I don't think that these 6 7 months or even a year of their life will really make too much of a difference. I wouldn't take the risk with COVID-19 in this
Okay.
instance. Yeah,
Right. I think you know, that's going to be, it's better to be, cautious, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Makes sense. So, moving on. Okay. So, I think now we're heading to the last question.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions, but they're not, uh, associated to one topic. So, would you want to, answer these first and then we move on to the closing one?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the question is, it's more on the lines of, I think, the conversation that we were having earlier, right, about joint families versus nuclear families.
Right.
So this person asks, what if parents itself are not taking proper care of kids, or they are or they themselves are not disciplined? Is it still normal to not interrupt?
Yeah. So that's why I said, in when I answered the question, that I was assuming that when you say that you have somebody who's interfering in the parenting, and you object to it, that you are coming from a relatively stable and normal environment. Obviously, that is the reason why I said that it all depends on the parenting skills of the young parents. So if the grandparents see that the young parents are not capable of looking after their children, then obviously I would interfere. But Paridhi, I don't know who is this person who's asking, but if she's a grandmother herself or if she's a mother, I don't know. But you have to remember that unless unless there is a very very strong substantial reason, a very valid reason that your kids are, whether it's your son and daughter-in-law, whether it's your daughter son-in-law, I don't know, unless they're really really ineffective at parenting. So maybe they're alcohol addicted, or they have a dangerous lifestyle which is a danger to the child. Then you legally, as an extended family member, have a right to interfere. But if you don't, if there is no way that you can show that your children are ineffective at parenting, then unfortunately in our country, whether it's legally or societal values or norms, unfortunately there's no way to for the extended family to interfere in this, because ultimately it's the parents who get the last say, unless, like I said, unless it's a very exceptional situation and you can show, or you can you have enough evidence to show that your children are incapable in some way. Maybe they're sick, or they're struggling with some mental disorder, or they have addiction issues, or just being disorganized and lazy parents is not enough. Whether it's legally or whether in any other way, to prove interference in the parenting style. So each parent has a right to parent the way they want, even if from your perspective it may not be the right way. From my perspective it may not be the right way, but it's a free country and people have the right to parent the way they want. So if they want to keep their kids awake late and not let them eat chocolate all day and let them do whatever they want, that's their right as parents, as long as the child is not in any real danger. Unfortunately, even the law in our country will not support in this case. So it's always going to be with the parents, unless you can prove that the parents are absolutely useless and they're not able to look after their kids.
Got it.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much answers that. I hope this person has got their answer. Next, there's this question. So Pavitra asks, as of now, I'm alone with my child, so I'm managing everything alone, such as household chores and also working from home. So how do I deal with the stress created by the situation?
Did she mention how old her child is?
No, she hasn't.
Okay.
Should I ask her?
Yeah, if you can, because it all depends here on the age of the child. I don't know how old, and she's living alone, as in she doesn't have family around, or is she a single mother, but she does have family around who she can rely on for support.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I need that information because as a single mother, obviously, if you have a very young child, then you're in a different situation than if you have a child who's a little bit older. So
Okay.
yeah.
I think so. We'd mentioned in the conversation that an average of 10 years. We had gotten these questions of how young are we speaking about.
Right.
So I think we can here take an average of 10. I mean.
And she says she's living alone, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah.
Sorry, Shruti. She's just replied. He is 7, and her husband is stuck in Calcutta, and she's living here in Delhi.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, there is no easy answer for this because, like I said, that, especially with mothers, this is a very unique situation because a lot of mothers are actually stuck with their children while their husbands are away. So, and then the husband is obviously not being able to travel back to be with his family because he's stuck in some other city. So, lot of mothers have written to me with this problem that they are stuck with their children and there's nobody to help them. I know that there's no easy way out of this. I actually really sympathize with you wherever you are, that you're stuck in this situation, but just hang in there. This is going to end eventually. So I know it's not easy looking after a child. The best thing I would say is that try to, like, in whenever I have struggled. So I'm going to answer this question, Paridhi, as a mother and not as a psychologist.
Sure.
Whenever I have struggled with my children, the best thing that has come in handy to me is routine. Routine. I cannot stress this enough, especially for a child who's 7. Try to, like, micromanage your child's routine as much as you can, like even by minutes. Because when you start doing that and you start enforcing that routine every day, what happens is a few days is tough, but eventually what will happen is that your child will start uh, biologically tuning himself or herself to that routine. So their body will expect that, okay, now it's 7:30, so it's time for my dinner. It's 9:30, so it's time for bed. It'll become automatic, and it'll take a lot of stress off the mother because she'll be able to plan her whole day around the child's routine, and she'll be able to fix her appointments and do her chores when the child is sleeping or when the child is busy with TV or whatever. I don't know if your child still takes daytime naps. I know a lot of children do, and I think that it depends child to child, because some children stop napping around the age of 5, but some children need it till the age of 10. So really look into that if that is something that could help you, because even if your child naps for 45 minutes in the daytime, that gives you 45 minutes to just relax and breathe and just do your own thing. So see if that's something that you can look into. But I would say really focus on the routine. That's one way that's always helped me when I've struggled with my kids.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah.
So there is another question, I think, I'm we can take before moving on to the closing note. So there's a parent, whose concern is around, how to handle students or children who are facing or who are feeling uncertainty about examinations.
Right. It depends on the age group, like the which examination they're talking about. Like if you're talking about 10th, 12th, like really key examinations, like your boards, for example, then obviously there's nothing to do but wait and watch, because every board is going to come out with its own, reset of when they're going to re-examine everybody. And for example, the CBSE just came out with their dates of July. So I eventually all boards are going to come out with their own dates. And so if you're talking about that, then unfortunately there's nothing to do but wait and watch. What I would advise children is that, especially if they've missed on their boards and their boards are rescheduled, so the boards were supposed to happen in March and they were supposed to be having their holidays by now, and now
Right.
they're having to sit for the boards again. What I would advise you is that keep yourself ready in terms of education. So don't miss out on this time to revise and re-revise your stuff. I mean, it's really key that you have this extra time, but at the same time you don't want to spend all of this time studying. So try to formulate it in such a way that you have enough time to relax and enjoy the lockdown, and just kind of because once things open up, Paridhi, it's going to be crazy. Like everything is going to be back to back, because everyone's going to want to finish whatever was left behind. So then you may see dates coming out in such a way that normally if you would get 2 days between each subject or 3 days, they may start doing back to back exams, because they'll be like, okay, you had 2 months to study, so now we're not going to give you a week between each subject. So what I would really advise kids is that don't be complacent. Keep revising your stuff, keep in touch with it, try not to forget it, because it's very easy to forget even if you studied it 100 times. So keep re-revising, because when the dates do come out, you may not actually get enough time to be prepared. As for kids who are in school level, I don't think they should worry. Like I said, that a few years, months, or year, 1 year here or there, it's not really going to make a difference. And it's not something that only your child is uniquely going through, or one particular classroom or one particular school is going through. It's a global problem. Every child in every country has missed out on education and has had exams missed out and things like that. Looking at it 10 years from now, do you think that when these kids look back, is it going to be something significant? No, I don't think so. So I don't think it's, unless you are in a board examination situation, then I understand the stress, for which I think that kids should just be prepared, because once the boards come out with their dates, it's going to be quite tight for them. So they should be ready for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, Shruti, I know I mentioned that that would be the last question, but I think we have, an interesting question, very, relatable. That's going to be the last. Then we'll move on to the
So
closing discussion. So, the question, the viewer asks how to manage kids with smartphones.
Uh, it depends on which timeline you're looking at. So if you're looking at, I've had this question a lot in the last few days. Um, it all depends on what timeline you're looking at. If you're looking at it in the lockdown, in the pandemic, I would say just let it go. Just let it go. There's no sense in you as a parent already stressed out with 100 other things to stress yourself out about your kids having extra screen time during 2 months of their life. It's
Right.
not worth fighting it right now, because you're in a situation where what else can you do? Like everybody, me as a clinical psychologist with 2 kids, I myself am at a loss for what entertainment I can provide kids at this time. What I do though, Paridhi, is that I don't give them a smartphone. I don't believe in small screens, especially for small children. So if you have small children, then I would advise that it's better to put on whatever they want to watch on TV and let them watch on a big screen, because the small screen can be quite bad for their eyes.
Right.
So what I do recommend is that try not to use small screens. If you can, try to use a big screen, a television, and let them watch whatever they want to watch on the television. In a pandemic, in a lockdown, for the next 1 month, if you're worried about the last 2 months and the next 1 month of the lockdown, don't worry about it. I wouldn't stress about it. There's enough going on for parents with work, managing their work, managing, household. Some of them have lost their jobs, salary cuts. This is not the time to stress about kids having 1-2 hours extra of TV in a day. It's not. In a
Mm-hmm.
normal situation, I don't advise it more than half an hour a day, purely because I think that the only reason for that is I think that kids tend to disconnect when they're on devices. So I
Yeah.
don't I don't think that there's a lot of debates about what's good about it, what's bad about it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, okay, it's bad for this, that bad. I don't get into the nitty gritties of it. For me, the only thing that logically makes sense is that kids tend to disconnect when they're on devices, and that disconnect from the reality around them can actually be detrimental for their health and for their development. So in the long
Right.
run, I wouldn't advise it. Like, I wouldn't advise 2-3 hours every day, for example, but half
Right.
an hour every day before bedtime, just so that you can have dinner, or half an hour during the afternoon if you just want to take a nap for half an hour. It's totally
Mm-hmm.
fine. I don't think that that is something which is going to destroy your child's life. I do recommend keeping a very strict eye on what they watch, because that is
Right.
something that is more dangerous than actually watching itself. So watching a cartoon on a smartphone is for half an hour a day is not bad, but watching something that could be that content that could be disturbing, that is bad. So
Right.
yeah, this is, at the end of the day, this is all you can do at the moment. I don't think it's something you
Okay.
should worry about.
I think, Shruti, there's also, the danger of cyberbullying and, other, I mean, when you mentioned dangerous, I think cyberbullying or, even the content, I mean, that could,
Yeah,
I mean, monitoring that content could be, not possible on small screens versus, watching on the big screen. So
yeah,
maybe that's why it could be advisable.
yeah. For small children, like I said, it's any day better to put it on the big screen, because you can control what they're watching. For older children, cyberbullying is a completely different topic than Paridi. That's a huge topic to discuss. And like I said, parents of whatever age children you have, you should be always aware of what your kids are doing online. And like I said, coming back to the discussion we had earlier about communication is key. So don't try to judge them if they're spending time on their phone. Try to find out what's going on, and then try to approach it with a very non-judgmental attitude. And they
Right.
might just tell you if they have any cyberbullying issues and all.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's interesting. So I think we're done with the questions. We can answer some of them later. Moving on to the closing note. So this is more like a discussion, like rather than a question, and a
Right.
comparative one. So I would want to compare two generations here. One would be the one that I belong to versus the new generation,
Right.
and this is more uh, directed towards the facts. So with my generation, since we were brought up in a time when internet was just internet had just entered the picture, and social media, going out with friends, all of that was just becoming a fad, or it was just gaining popularity,
Right.
right? Compared to also, before actually I begin, before I do get into this, I would like to mention how last time, you remember how you mentioned that uh, while discussing interpersonal relationships, that the situation isn't too different from something that existed years back, when people were at home and spending time with their family uh, over other things.
Right.
So then yeah, so this is more like a continuation to that. So
Right.
this comparison between my generation, which was more outgoing and spent a lot more time outdoors rather than indoors, compared to the new generation, which is currently in the lockdown with their parents.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't want to say that there is a disconnect, but definitely I think I didn't have that much opportunity to bond with my parents, or form as much of a friendly relation as compared to the current generation, who is who has this opportunity to spend time to learn new things. And obviously parents these days are a lot more trendy and open to experimenting things as well.
Right.
So I wanted to discuss your views on that.
Okay, so if I understand your point correctly, I think what you're trying to say is that you think that this lockdown is going to make children closer with their parents, right? Is that?
Right, right. Yes, yes. That's
It could be. It could be. Like I said before in one of the questions when we answered, I said I don't think family systems can change overnight. So unfortunately, dysfunctional families will remain dysfunctional, whether it's a lockdown or not, because these are patterns of behavior that we've learned over a period of time, and they've been carried forward from generations. Like your great grandmothers taught it to your grandmother taught it to your mother. It goes on and on and on. So dysfunctional families actually continue being dysfunctional regardless of whether there is a lockdown or not. If you have a parent who's not able to bond with their child, it's not going to change whether there's a lockdown or not. You're just going to see more problems. So dysfunctional family changes is something that happens over a period of time. So like I said, if parents are aware of the problems in their parenting and in their parents parenting which they have adapted, then you could see that okay, these parents are aware and they're trying to make conscious changes and they're trying to make changes in the way they raise their kids. But I don't think that a lockdown in itself is enough for that. I think it requires a lot of introspection, a lot of insight on the parents part to see where their parents went wrong and try to change those behaviors. So if you had a mother who was very critical, if you had a father who was very disconnected, if you have a father-in-law and a mother-in-law who are very demanding and very sexist in the way they behave with you, then obviously those patterns are going to change with you. If you make the conscious changes to stop that and start a new pattern, then your children will grow up with the new set of behaviors. Unfortunately, I think the only way this is going to work is that lockdowns will make dysfunctional families more dysfunctional and functional families more functional. That's the way it's going to be. So families who are good at performing together, who are a good team, who look after each other well, who take care of each other, they will all do very well in the future as well. But
right.
families who have dysfunctional patterns will show dysfunctional patterns. We have had cases of domestic violence hotlines ringing round the clock nowadays, child abuse hotlines ringing round the clock, child pornography websites being used round the clock. So why is all this happening, Paridhi, if a lockdown would be beneficial to
Right.
bonding, right? So it's dysfunctional behavior doesn't disappear. It's just going to get even more aggravated, unfortunately. So this is why I say that if you have realized that you are in such a situation and you want help, this is the time to come forward and rectify the situation. There are many mental health counselors and professionals available. This is the best time to realize it and get help and try to change the situation. But for families who've bonded well during this, I mean, it's very good for them, obviously. But if
Right.
you are in a situation where you don't know, then and you are in a bad situation and you want to get out of it, then this is the best time to look for help.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. I think I was looking at, the positive side. I mean, I've seen uh, plenty of examples across, social media where children are, bonding with their parents, preparing food, or, I mean, the other day I was teaching my mother how to get on Instagram. So something that probably I would not have, had the time to do
Yeah,
otherwise, if not for
absolutely.
the lockdown.
That's because you're a functional adult, and obviously they are not. I mean, as a mental health professional, I'm not concerned about the well performing lot. I mean, I am not worried about them. That's so. If you have an opportunity, obviously you should take the opportunity to bond with your parents. I mean, it's common sense. Vice versa, parents should take the opportunity to bond with their children. It's common sense. I mean, you've suddenly got all this time on your hands and you've got nowhere else to be and you've got no pressures. Obviously it's the best time to use it effectively. uh,
Right.
but those are the people that we are not worried about.
Right, right. Yes, yes. Let's hope we're able to, reach out, as you mentioned that, for the other side, for people who are seeking help, let's hope that, they are able to, get past the stigma and
Right.
approach us. To those of you, as I mentioned at the start as well, I mean, I was trying to, share with the viewers how, we've been working with you, offering digital therapy as well,
Yeah.
and this is the time to get past the hesitations or basically just take the step, and how we're just a call away. Yeah, so the question, who there's I'm not sure of the gender. So the question says that, ma'am, could you please discuss my question related to father and a son who's 7 months old, and the bond between them, as uh, the woman works in a different place than the husband.
Okay. If I understand this father correctly, he's alone with his, or he's with his 7-month-old son, and his wife is working somewhere else. So the mother is not around, if I understand correctly.
Father is away, and yes, I think the son is with the mother. So the bond between the father and the child.
Okay. At 7 month old, at 7 months old, I wouldn't worry about it because the child is too small, and up until the age of about year and a half, you won't really see much bonding going on between the child and father. Of course, the child becomes aware of the father, becomes aware of the father's presence, he becomes aware of the father's voice, he becomes aware of how his father looks. But if, especially if you are nursing, so if you're breastfeeding, then you are going to be the center of your child's universe for a while. I wouldn't worry about it till 18 months. I think that until 18 months, whether your child is a girl or a boy, it doesn't matter. As a mother, as a nursing mother, especially if you're breastfeeding, you are the whole and soul of everything right now. And you don't have to worry about it affecting the bonding. The real bonding between a child and father starts around the age of 1.5, because by then child is able to retain memories, and he has a memory of his father. He knows who his father is. But right now, the connection of the child is very biological to its mother. So more than the memories, it's the body's biological drive to survive, which drives the connection between the mother and child at this age. So survival is what makes the mother so important at this age. It's not memories. But by 1.5, you will see that the child starts having memories of how his father looks, and he'll be able to say papa or daddy or whoever. Whenever he sees his father, he'll be able to correlate the term for his dad. So then you know that the child recognizes the father as somebody significant in his or her life. So up to 18 months, it's not something to worry about.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think then it brings us to the end of the session.
Great.
Thank you, Shruti. I think
Thank you so much, Paridhi.
it's been great. I think it was a very interesting topic, as well as the questions that we got.
Yeah.
It does definitely highlight how people are stuck in difficult scenarios, especially at this time.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
I also had a lot of fun. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Paridhi. And thank you, everyone at Healthy Minds World for organizing this very important session.